somebody had mentioned the lips, in the courtroom in the chat that I saw earlier. It's a very important thing because a lot of people were convinced that he was trying to stifle my niece's testimony, but that's
Mhm.
not the truth. I was sitting in the courtroom at the time, and my niece kept mouthing to him. She kept trying to speak to him directly, like just mouthing words, not vocalizing. So in between questions, during those silences, she's trying to speak to him. When she walked up and sat down, the first thing she did was try to communicate to him directly at the defendant's table. And through that, my brother had nudged and tried to get his attorneys to say something about it, to make it stop during the
I'm going to
testimony,
explain
but
all this if it's
nobody was
foreign
saying
to you.
anything to her about it. It was a problem. As it turns out, then he was doing a dad reaction, and said, "S- please stop mouthing at me. Still your lips. Just stop doing that." He didn't try to interfere with the testimony. Clearly, she was able to say whatever she wanted on the stand. That's not how this worked at all.
So, for anybody who doesn't know or what we're talking about right now, what the context to that is, we're going to get into it in the context of this stream. For those who do, I'm just going to show you the picture because it's an amazing thing where you read something in the news, and then if you decide to try to dig in a little bit, when you don't find answers immediately, or even after digging in a lot, well, then you have a lot more questions. This is the image, the infamous image of Zacharia Anderson at the trial, allegedly intimidating one of the witnesses during his murder trial, the witness being his 14-year-old daughter at the time 14-year-old daughter. This picture, close your lips when you're testifying, was suggested by everybody. Everywhere that I saw was suggested as being the defendant in real time intimidating his daughter into shutting up during the testimony that they said incriminated her father. And by all accounts, it did because he got convicted. I tried to find what testimony was being spoken at the time of that image because I couldn't find the timestamp in any of the live broadcasts. Couldn't find it in any of the news. And I was saying, well, Jesus, was she saying something like really damning? Or is there another explanation to this that might not be what the headline news is running post-conviction in order to justify this conviction and make this guy look like the monster that many people believe he is? So that's it. That was the context. We're going to get into it. And that's his brother, Solomon Anderson, on an interview with a recovering addict, did a podcast with him. We're going to get into this entire trial. Zacharia Anderson, convicted of murdering, I'm going to forget all the names in this, and it's not to be disrespectful. It's because there's too many names. And I was on a panel about a week and a half ago, and this subject came up, and I was like, oh, I read about it very briefly. It's like, oh, okay. Not that I believe everything I read in the news anymore. It's quite the opposite, but had no knowledge to formulate an opinion. The panel, which consisted of 9 other attorneys, said this was the most egregious trial, the most egregious miscarriage of justice. Guilt or innocence aside, because he might still be guilty, as a process, this was the most egregious miscarriage of justice imaginable in terms of what evidence was allowed in, what evidence was not allowed in, what witness tampering might have actually occurred, beginning to end. This is a murder trial in Kenosha. The judge of this trial is the judge from the Rittenhouse trial. And if you don't know the story, we're going to get Zacharia Anderson's brother to talk about it. Before we do that, let me just make sure that we are, in fact, running properly everywhere. Okay, so we're on Rumble, which is good. Hit the plus button on Rumble, share the link around. We'll make the landing page so people can hear about this. Are we simultaneously on Locals? We are on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Okay, Solomon, I'm going to bring you in about 30 seconds. Standard disclaimers: no medical advice, no legal advice, no election fortification advice. Super chats, YouTube takes 30%. If you want to support the channel, you can do it on Rumble. They have Rumble rants. Rumble is not taking any of this of that amount for the rest of the year. They typically take 20%. Best way to support the channel, if you like what we do here, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Become an annual subscriber, and you can see the behind-the-scenes documentary, history of Chattanooga through the eyes of Robert Barnes as he relives his childhood. Okay. Let's do this. Solomon, I'm bringing you in 3, 2, 1. Sir, how goes the battle?
it's more of a marathon than a foot race, so it's going well enough.
Do I want to do wide angle? I'll do wide angle. I think it frames
Sure.
better.
Yeah, that's good. That's
I
good.
was going to say, I can't. Now we're going to get into the hand gesture, what it means before people start hypothesizing as to satanic worshiping. Solomon, let's okay. Everyone knows the backdrop. Your brother was just convicted of murder in a trial where people who paid close attention to it and legal minds took serious issue with a number of things. There's a GoFundMe to help him raise funds for his appeal. I've already shared that link around last week. We're going to share it around again. Before we even get into all of this, so who are you? Where are you from? And what was family life like as children? I mean, what's your relationship like with your brother? How many siblings and the whole family situation, which some people might not know?
Uh, well, my name's Solomon. I'm Zach's younger brother by 4 years, just about. And total, there were 9 siblings. Most of them are half siblings to us. The eldest 4 were from our original 2 parents, and they separated and had more children afterwards. So 9 total children. My next elder brother passed away in 1982. He was about 9 months old, give or take, with an accident in the bathtub. So I wasn't even around yet at that time. My parents split up actually while my mother was pregnant with me. I believe that it was kind of like a last ditch effort to salvage their marriage after my brother's passing. And so with that, we ended up being placed primarily with my mother until 1989. My father had remarried, and my mother decided to leave us and move to Texas. She kicked us out, told us to get off her lawn actually and walk down the road. So my elder 2 brothers and I were very, very close. We were very much raised in a situation where we bonded together and took care of each other to a great degree. Um, that's Josh, Zach, and myself. The other siblings came for the most part later, and my next younger sister moved to Texas with my mother, but the rest of us went with my dad. My dad got divorced in I think 1991, and then we were raised by a single father for quite a few years. So during those years, as a single dad with 3 boys, he did the best he could. But there's only so much that you can do. You still have to be working. You still have to be able to maintain the home, and it's a hard stretch. So my brothers and I were very, very close. We fought like cats and dogs. We bickered through most of our childhood, and like brothers do, we came out the other side still closer than other siblings, might be in different circumstance. So Zach and Josh have always been, kind of my caretaker, even from those early years. Um, with that being said, that's kind of the role that Zach took as I grew up. He made sure that I got my license. He spent the hours on the road driving with me. He got me my first job outside of agriculture, and he drove me to work and home regardless of the weather. He bailed me out of bad situations where um, I had a girlfriend who's an alcoholic, and she was abusive, and he got me a job and showed up with a U-Haul truck and moved me. He was always my parachute when I needed it. He was always there for me, and that's a big part of why I continue to fight.
How old are you, and how old is Zach?
So I'm currently 39, and he turns 43 in July.
Okay, and I had another question. It's going to be a silly question. I presume there was a religious element in your family. Zachariah, Solomon, Joshua.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know much about the Bible, but I know that.
yeah, you didn't even hear our middle names. It's Joshua, Daniel, Zachariah, Joseph, Aaron, Elijah, Solomon, Moses, right? So it's very heavy. She started with the Old Testament. My mother was raised very Catholic, very much so Catholic. My grandmother was a staunch Roman Catholic, and so she started with the Old Testament, and for the most part, we're named in some sort of religious nod, or some respect to the Bible and that piece of our family history.
All right, now what we're going to do before we get into the actual trial stuff, we're going to move. It doesn't change anything for us. I'm going to end this on YouTube, and we're going to be exclusive on Rumble and locals. So everybody on YouTube, head on over to Rumble. The link is in the pinned comment in the chat, and I'll post the entire interview later to YouTube. So I'm just going to end it on YouTube now.